After choosing empowerment over dread, I began searching for meaningful and effective solutions to put into practice in my own life. Progressive Hedonist is a podcast to share the ways we can take on climate change through food and joy. On days when this seems completely impossible, this podcast is a reminder that each of us can make an impact. I'm Dana Cowan. Join me in conversations with thought leaders like Alice Waters, Andrew Zimmern, Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, and more. We can learn together what is possible. You can listen anywhere podcasts can be found and join the conversation on Instagram at progressive_hedonist.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
Westholme is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
This is Capri Cafaro, host of Eat Your Heartland Out. This week, we are saluting two women who have brought their unique talents to North Dakota's food and drink scene. I'll introduce you to Elena Silvestri Martinez, an immigrant from Moldova that has turned her passion for cooking into teaching kids kitchen skills. And you'll also hear from Susan Rudd, president and mead maker at Prairie Rose Meadery. That's all next. Elena, thank you for joining Eat Your Heartland Out.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I am super excited because I actually had a chance to meet you in person, which doesn't always happen with a number of the guests here on Eat Your Heartland Out. But you and I had a chance to spend time in the kitchen when I was out in North Dakota filming an episode about honey in North Dakota for season 2, coming out next year of America the Bountiful, my TV series on public television nationwide. So it was a lot of fun in the kitchen, and I thought that it would be a lot of fun to introduce you and your story to our listeners here at Eat Your Heartland Out.
Thank you so much. Yes, that was such an amazing experience, getting to do this and see your passion for food too, and passion for old recipes and discovering, those old forgotten towns kind of and old forgotten recipes. That's just, amazing. So thank you so much for that too.
It was great. And I want to talk about the honey cake at some point during our conversation because, it really was something that seemed really hard and intimidating on the front end, but ended up being relatively simple. So I do want to talk about the honey cake and its recipe a little bit later in the program. But first, let's talk about you. You came over to the United States from Moldova a number of years ago and ultimately settled there in North Dakota. So give us a little bit of background on your journey to the United States and how you planted roots in North Dakota.
Yes, so I am from Moldova originally. I came here in 2008. It's already 16 years. It's hard to believe, but I came here as an exchange student. I was so excited to discover, the culture here, get a little bit of experience of how is it to work here as a student, for summer and studying. And then, later on, I met my husband. And so we got married. I ended up staying here in the United States. And it was an interesting journey for me, not knowing, not speaking very good English. That was, a little bit of intimidating for me because, I will always worried about my accent. So I thought, might as well, I'm not going to say anything to anybody because I was so scared. But once I start to interact with people here and speak, they fall in love with my accent and they said, you have to, talk. Don't be embarrassed because you have such a nice accent.
So I'm sure that was definitely a bit of an intimidating journey for you, but you obviously have, decided that you wanted to stay in the United States and you met your husband and, and then ultimately, developed a career in food because of your passion in food. Obviously, this is a show about food too. So I am infinitely curious, as always, to find out what drew you to food as your path and your passion?
Yes, so I've always, since I was a little girl, watching my grandmother and my mother cook in the kitchen, I was fascinated by watching them, all the time to make all these interesting recipes, especially, in Moldova, a lot of people make homemade bread. Like that's like our specialty, and I was like captivating the moments where they were knead with such power, into that dough and just getting it together and see how it rises and how they create those interesting braids, so I grew up with around food that I when I came here to the United States, I tried to share, our culture with people here. And you know what they say, what better way to connect with people than through food? So, yeah, definitely I started my journey, I wanted to kind of connect with my heritage, my roots back home. And I decided to, start a catering service back in Dickinson, where I lived for 9 years. Dickinson, North Dakota, and I had success, with that. So going further, I wanted to, all my friends and family were asking me for recipes. So I thought, why not, put everything together in one book? So this is how I started to write the recipes, asking my mother about the old recipes, because that's what's kind of, I am all about tradition,
Yes.
And I wanted to discover and to know about more about my family too, my family history and stuff like that. Because, when you grow up, you're interested, but yet, you kind of let it go. And somewhere,
Sure.
And then once you become, interested more and more, you ask, who you ask, your mother and your grandmother. So
That's right.
gathered a number of recipes and I put it in one book, which I'm very proud of. And yeah, I'm also, passionate about desserts, because that's another story on desserts too. And too, old, those old recipes of desserts that, are absolutely fascinating. So I wanted to share with the world as well. So
What's the name of both of your books?
my first book, it's called Moldovan Cuisine, Eastern Authentic Dishes. And my second book is Sweet Escape International Desserts.
And Sweet Escape was something that you gifted to me while we were visiting, and I was in North Dakota, which is awesome, and I cannot wait to bake my way through that book for sure. I wanted to go back to something that you said that I think is really important, and that is the concept of food connecting to tradition, but also food, being able to educate others about culture as well. It's, I think you said earlier that it's a way for people to, understand culture, and that I couldn't agree more. And that's one of the things that has drawn me to food as well, because I see it as a way to, better connect people in understanding different cultures, different points of view, different upbringings and backgrounds, because people enjoy food no matter where they're from and no matter what the cuisine origin is. And I'm sure you would agree.
Yes, I do. In fact, here in the United States, there's such a diversity of cultures. And, I get to go around and taste all different foods. And, when you meet somebody and you're so excited to kind of, share your food, your culture, and those forgotten recipes. And literally, I love to tell people how I grew up and what I ate, and these are food is the main topic of the conversation, I'll say,
Right. That's right. That absolutely. And I think that we can all agree that is a way that, we can educate one another and enjoy each other's company at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. And, like I've said before, watching my grandmother creating something out of literally nothing, you know what I mean? Like creating
Right.
those delicious dishes, creating those flavors that it's hard to forget about. That's like fascinating. It was fascinating to me back then. It's fascinating to me until this day too, because I have my mother over. She came from Spain, and she was making me some dishes that they are absolutely delicious, and I've tried to make it myself. And I said, I don't know, it's not the same as you do it. And she's told me, because I've done it for so long, and I practice it. I got there, so because she's from Moldova, we grew up in Moldova, and she, later on moved to Spain. And that's how she told me, you have to kind of, it helps if you live there and live their culture too. You kind of get more closer to creating this perfect dish. I mean, so.
Yep, and chasing those taste memories, as I know we've talked about. So tell me, as you're reflecting on the importance of food connecting to your heritage and talking about your mom and, being in the kitchen with her, share with me and with our listeners some of your favorite recipes that remind you of cooking with your mom and your grandma.
Absolutely. So, the traditional food we have in Moldova it's very simple to make, but yet so delicious. So there's a traditional dish called sarmale, which is basically cabbage rolls with, rice and meat. And we add dill. Dill is such a powerful herb that makes the taste, come together and also differentiates it from the other dishes, and it gives that special taste. And then we ate a lot of polenta, mamaliga, we call it.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of farmers, in my country. So we definitely, grew a lot of corn, and we created all sorts of different dishes, with corn flour. So we make porridge with a little bit of caramelized onions and a little bit of a feta cheese, and that's a very delicious dish too. Also, another very popular dish is chicken noodle soup with noodles made from scratch.
Yes,
the mirror of our culture too. Sort of say. But another dish will be placinte, which is a fried bread with feta cheese as well, because like I said, a lot of farming, a lot of cheeses,
yes,
a lot of milk, and also my country is a wine country. I know I'm jumping from one thing to the other, but
but this is all relevant.
Yes,
you're painting a great picture.
Yes, so in my country, Moldova, every other household they make their own wine, and that's why everybody that I meet, I say you have to go visit Moldova because it's so interesting to see. We actually have a winery. It's the biggest winery in the world. It's 200 kilometers underground. So you will have stuff to see there definitely. So.
Wow. I've just learned a ton about Moldova, and maybe for folks that are not aware of exactly where Moldova is, give us an orientation of where it is on the map.
Yeah, so Moldova is in between Romania. It's west of Romania and north of Ukraine. It's a very small country. It has a shape of a shoe, of a boot. And yes, I know, many people don't know where Moldova is or didn't hear about Moldova. And that's why kind of, again, going back to where my passion for food and sharing my culture started, because people don't know where Moldova is. So for me, it was such an honor to kind of, tell everybody that Moldova, it's a very small country, but it's a very interesting country. I know it's a country that was part of the Soviet Union. So it gained its independence on August the 27th of 1991. So yes, we do have, going back to food, we kind of, being a ex-Soviet Union country, we have a little bit of a Russian culture, Ukrainian culture, and Romanian culture. So when we combine all these foods together, you kind of put your own touch as well on a dish that already, existed.
One of the reasons why I wanted you to kind of paint the picture of where Moldova is so folks can better understand the different influences culturally on the cuisine in Moldova. And as you were saying, as neighbors of Romania and Ukraine, and obviously being part of the former Soviet Union, certainly the Russian culture is also permeating the foodways there in Moldova. But it was also interesting because you were mentioning the fact that there's wine country and there's farms and there's cheese and there's all these other things. So I'm also really curious about the climate there. It sounds like it's landlocked, from what you've described. What is the climate in Moldova that makes it so ripe for growing grapes and having this very fertile agricultural land?
Yes, so the climate, it's very similar to North Dakota's. I'm not sure if you guys been here. I mean, I know Capri, you've been here, but it's really hot in the summer and it's really cold in wintertime, We don't have as much wind as North Dakota has, but it's not that dry either. So I think it makes it perfect for, farmers. So, we like I said, we grow a lot of corn, sunflower, wheat. There's a lot of animal farmers. We grow a lot of cattle and pig, and yeah. So, like I said, lots of cheese, lots of milk, lots of meat. Moldovan cuisine, it's has a variety of meat dishes, veggie dishes. Like I said, the traditional dish, and I grew up eating a lot of polenta, which is cornmeal porridge.
Yes, well, as an Italian, we're very familiar with polenta too. So.
Yeah, so when you combine polenta with feta cheese, it's amazing. And then you throw those caramelized onions on top. It's like, oh, it's that taste that you will never forget about.
That sounds absolutely fabulous and so simple, but so savory as well. And what you were just describing, it sounds like what you were trying to convey is that the climate in Moldova, and it sounds like the climate in North Dakota, are somewhat similar.
Yes. So, I actually remembered about, when I first, met my husband and we kind of, I wanted to share, my food with him and he was sharing his culture as well. For me, it was fascinating to see how, Puerto Rico, he's from Puerto Rico. So how they combine, beans with rice and meat all together. So in my country, you won't see anything like that. Like we do not combine, meat with rice and beans. And we actually have a dish. It's called fasolica, which is basically mashed beans with caramelized onions on top and a little bit of a homemade red sauce, and you will have it, you will eat it just like a dip. But like I said, I actually made something for him. He said that, I think you're crazy for making this dish, but I said no, because I grew up with this dish. So, we had cattle. So my mom would boil milk and not only my mother, everybody in my country knows about this dish. So we will boil milk and add pasta to it, like cooked pasta and a little bit of sugar. And that was the best. I remember as a kid, I was asking my mom to make that almost every day. And she said, okay, enough of this already. So I made it for my husband thinking that he would love it, and he said, this is so weird. But yet when he tried it, I know it sounds kind of, weird, but it tasted really good. So you try to discover and share those old recipes, and it was very hard. I remember, my grandparents, they went through a war, and they had to create dishes, for with what they had, on hand. So this is one of those dishes, definitely.
Yeah, well, look, from scarcity becomes creativity, right? And I can say I think many of us can relate to that with, grandparents going through the Great Depression or, World War II and or being immigrants and having limited resources and making do with what they have and still to this day those things, even if they're not fancy, are absolutely loved and revered and held on to, which I wanted to ask, this combination of like boiled milk and pasta, which sounds like is like a childhood favorite of yours. Do you make it for your kids?
Oh, yes, I did. And so, like I said, my kids told me, Mom, something is wrong because this is doesn't sound right. But I said, wait, go along the process. And then at the end, you will taste it and tell me. So they liked it. I mean, my little one, he does not like it, but my oldest daughters, they absolutely loved it. So, and that's what, it's fascinating to me too, because they watch me now how I cook. So, because, I tell them, watch me how I cook, because later in life, you will remember my words, so you will learn how to make bread. And actually, my oldest daughter, she knows how to make bread, and she knows, the steps and how long you have to let it to rise and have to let the dough rest until it goes and shape it and braid it too, and it's I love it.
That's awesome. And to think that, bread was kind of your gateway into your fascination with food. And now you're passing that on to your kids, cooking with your kids and educating them about the kitchen. Did that inspire you to start Little Chef's Academy and try to get, other children engaged?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, this was my daughter's idea because, they will gather their friends, and they will say, Mom, I want you to teach us how to make, bread or how to make plachinti, that fried bread with cheese and all the stuff that they will take for lunch, for school, and their friends will see it and they say, oh my God, this is so delicious. We want to learn to see if we can make it. So this is how the idea of Little Chef Academy came up. And also, I love to teach kids because, nowadays it's so hard to kind of keep them away from their gadgets, from all this technology. So I thought, what a better way to kind of disconnect the kids from all these gadgets, to learn something different. And actually, this is so, how do I say, amazing, for kids to learn because they can, there's a lot of busy parents out there. And I know in the morning, they can even, make their own breakfast, simple as, the omelet or you know what I mean? So for me, that was like, okay, this is it. We will start something so you can share with your friends and, we can gather together and cook together. And yeah, this is how Little Chef Academy was created.
Oh, that is just perfect. And how you've been doing that for what, 2 years now?
Yes, 2 years now.
And you also, so you had a catering business, you've had 2 cookbooks, you have Little Chef's Academy, but then you also share your knowledge with the viewing audience there in North Dakota. When did you start to do that?
Yeah, so I started on North Dakota Today, the cooking segment last year. I was a guest and, the producer there, she was just, okay, we have to have you on. The audience loved the dishes that I presented and this is how I started there. And I love, like I said, here in North Dakota, there's a lot of Ukrainian people, Russian Germans or German Russians, and they know, the dishes that I'm preparing, they're familiar with, and they're so excited to see it on TV. So, yeah.
Cool. And I think that, the average person, maybe outside of the Dakotas, that might be listening to this show might not be aware of the Eastern European diaspora that is there in the Dakotas, which is pretty cool.
Yes. Yep.
How neat. This has been so fun. If there's one thing that you could, that you would want to share with our listeners about your experience cooking or Moldovan cuisine, what would it be?
Definitely not be afraid to experiment in the kitchen, and like I said at the beginning of the interview, what better way to connect with people than through food, Don't be afraid to taste and try another culture's dishes. Don't be afraid to share to share your culture with people, because at the end of the day, that's what makes us getting close to each other as a nation.
You have reminded me of something very important before I let you go, because I promised that we would talk about the honey cake. So, food brought you and I together, and that honey cake, brought us together even more. You taught me something directly about, the traditional Moldovan desserts. So, tell us that process and what to expect, because folks can actually see this particular recipe in your dessert cookbook as well.
Yeah, so a honey cake, it's a Russian recipe, actually. As I told you that Moldova was a Soviet Union country, so this cake was a tradition, in my family and in many families. It's a tradition in Eastern Europe because it's made from honey being the main ingredient. It's thin layers. It's a very old recipe going back into the 19th century. It's a very, it's created of thin layers, and then the frosting being sour cream. And this takes me back to the farmers again. They didn't have access to lots of dairy, kind of, like heavy cream, and they had to, use what they had. So they used sour cream with sugar. So that's an unbelievable taste right there. It's unique. So it's a very, very delicious cake. It's a little bit of how do I say it? It takes a little bit of time to make it. You have to have patience because it has to stay refrigerated overnight for those layers to be able to kind of, soften up. And but at the end of the day, it's worth it. So yes.
So one of the things that shocked me, because was the sour cream as frosting, and I didn't know what to expect at all. You have these multiple layers, and as you said, they're very, very thin. But then it all comes together. You put it together overnight, and I got to taste the final. The final product that you had made the day before. And it really was moist and soft and sweet. And then you put berries in there that kind of balanced it out. It was just incredible. And what is the traditional name for this cake?
It's medovik. Medovik in Russian means honey. So medovik honey cake.
Medovik honey cake. So I couldn't let you go without talking about the honey cake. I promised we would talk about it. So we had to do it because it was that honey cake, that food that brought you and I together to share your story, with my viewing audience on America the Bountiful next year. But why wait until 2025 when we could have this conversation now and share it with a listening audience on Eat Your Heartland Out? Where can folks find out more about you if they want to learn more about you, your cookbooks, your work there in North Dakota?
Yes, so I have a Facebook page called Bayleaf Table or Little Chef Academy, and then my website, littlechefacademy.com. So yes, they can find me on Instagram as well, to Bayleaf Table or Little Chef Academy.
Fantastic. Well, I say definitely worth a follow, worth a look. Follow Elena. What she does is incredible, and it comes from the heart. Elena, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with Eat Your Heartland Out.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
This is Eat Your Heartland Out with me, Capri Cafaro. After the break, I'll be back with an interview from the archives with Susan Rudd of Prairie Rose Meadery.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. In Northern Australia, there's a different approach to raising high-quality beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and Northern Territory, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme stewards 16 million acres of rangeland guided by their natural ecosystem. They're led by a belief that if they balance the needs of their cattle with the needs of the environment, both can thrive. Westholme's team of rangeland experts and nature managers use a variety of tools to monitor and respond to the welfare of the environment, like satellites that assess grass health and on-the-ground research. Cattle are happier when they have the freedom to forage and explore, so Westholme ensures that they can roam wild, foraging at will for the first 2 to 3 years of their lives. Their cows graze on native grasses like Mitchell grass, which is only found in Australia, along with dozens of other plants, herbs, and seasonal legumes. The result is a high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia and a flavor suited to complement any cuisine. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westhome.com.
Welcome back to Eat Your Heartland Out. Before the break, I was speaking with Elena Silvestro Martinez about her passion for cooking, her approach to sharing recipes, and the value of food in culture. Now I want to take a journey back into the Eat Your Heartland Out archives to bring you an interview I did with another consequential woman shaping North Dakota's culinary landscape. Susan Rudd is a mead maker and president of Prairie Rose Meadery. Take a listen to our conversation. Hey, Susan, thank you so much for joining the show today. We appreciate your time.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
Well, I have learned so much about mead throughout interviewing folks such as yourself, and I know that our listeners are learning a lot too. But everybody has a little bit of a different story on how they've gotten involved in starting to make mead. So how did you come to this place to make mead?
Some friends of mine were home mead makers, and I tried theirs. That's a little over back in, I think, 1996. My husband and I both fell in love with it, and we were making it shortly thereafter ourselves, and it just went from there. We've been making it ever since.
Oh, wow. So have you been making this a full-time gig since the 90s, or
No.
have you been doing something else?
No. I work at NDSU in agricultural research.
So North Dakota State.
Yes, North Dakota State University. And but we've been open at Prairie Rose Meadery here since 2015.
Okay, so it's gone from a passion to a business in the last 6 years, even though it's something you've been doing for the last 25 or so, which is pretty impressive. So what kind of mead do you make? Has that evolved over the yeast?
I guess I've made very similar. I used to make it a little thicker, richer, sweeter. I kind of make it more semi-sweet now. A little, although it still has a huge honey presence, it's a little more like wine drinking rather than almost, I think when I first started, I made it more like getting close to a liqueur almost.
Interesting.
But other than that, I make just plain mead with traditional, just from honey. I make fruit and spice along with it. Made caramelized honey. I've made maple and honey. Just a big variety.
How do you come up with these flavors? It sounds like you offer, quite a wide range of different types of what sounds like, in the semi-sweet range right now, but a lot of different flavor profiles.
I guess you just look at what tastes good when you're eating other things like fruit, candies or things like that, or combinations of fruit and spices that work well together. And you just think about those with how they work with honey. It's just kind of, and then friends, I'll have tasted meads that other friends have made or something. And like last night, I started a mojito mead that a friend of mine had made and just asked him, do you care if I make this at the meadery?
So I can't even imagine that. I mean, on one hand, I can because, it does have a bit of a, it's got the sugar, it's got the sort of syrupy, but what is a mojito mead? I mean, that really sounds like a clashing of cultures in some way.
Well, no, it's just, you got the little bit of honey in the background, but you're going to have the lime and the mint flavors on top of that. Kind of drinks more like a wine almost.
Wow. Do you offer the same types of flavors year round, or do you go seasonal with the different types of ingredients you have access to?
Yeah, we have probably 6 or 8 that we have all the time, and then we will switch around. And then, a lot of those will end up carrying over. So we'll save a few cases of each and bring them out later again. Yeah. So we right now have the option of about 25 flavors.
That seems like so many. I mean, when you think about even wines, you have different varieties and different blends, but even extensive commercial, wineries don't have 25 different types. So it's kind of, it's a hard concept to grasp that you could have 25 different types of meads. I mean, give us an idea of the kind of spectrum of, what you might have, particularly in the 8 meads that you offer, pretty consistently.
Well, our biggest ones are traditional, which is just North Dakota clover honey fermented. And then we have a ginger mead, which is just a nice ginger and honey flavor. We'll actually make some mixed drinks out of that, also blending it with sour and lime, somewhat like a Moscow Mule, but a little lighter.
Interesting.
Then we have an apple, which is just made with all local North Dakota apples and honey. Blackberry we have pretty much all the time. One we've added that we've been keeping going now for a few years is a pineapple chipotle.
Whoa.
Which is it's not hot or anything, but it's got a nice smokiness along with the pineapple from the chipotles. We've generally have a grape one, at least one on. Right now we have both a white and a red. Let's see. So, our vanilla cinnamon. That's a pretty common one that we have. But some others that we've had that we probably won't make again for a while, but have been pretty good sellers in their own. But like a chocolate raspberry or a chocolate orange.
Right.
Let's see what else. We've got a triple berry, which is blackberry, raspberry, blackcurrant. I could keep going.
I bet. So you have so many different types and so many different types of ingredients. I mean, but it sounds like, just from the few that you referenced, that you do try to source what ingredients you can locally from North Dakota. Is that the case? And how does that sort of inform the flavors if if you're trying to keep things local to North Dakota ingredients and what's grown in that type of climate?
Yeah, we do try to. All of our honey comes from North Dakota. North Dakota is the #1 honey producing state in the nation. So that, getting really good local honey is not a problem.
Now, that's something I did not know. Wow.
Yep. Our beekeepers, generally, they have a fairly decent growing season here, and, a lot of clover, a lot of sunflower, alfalfa fields that flower a long time. So we do well there, but then they also actually take their bees south for the winter. So they are getting. Now,
I've never heard of that. So it's like, birds that fly south for the winter, beekeepers take their bees south. I mean, I guess that does make some sense. Yeah, so they don't die in the freeze.
Yeah, it is hard to keep, especially large quantities of bees during the winter here. So our apiary calls himself a medium-sized apiary. He has about 12,000 hives. So there are a few apiaries in the state that have 150 to 200,000 hives. So
wow, that's a lot of bees.
Yeah, that amazes me.
I gotta admit that intimidates me. I'm scared. I get scared of one bee, not to mention whatever 150,000 hives of them. My goodness.
For the most part, honeybees are fairly mellow, and as long as you leave them alone, they won't bother you.
Well, I don't think I'm going to try to experiment and find that out, but I will imbibe in some of this honey-based mead, which all sounds totally incredible. I want to turn a minute to the fruits because it's my understanding that you use all natural fruits and no extracts, which has to really preserve that uniqueness and freshness in your flavors.
Yeah, I do think you get a little more freshness out of. And we will, like I said, we buy local, so it's fresh fruit. Sometimes we do end up freezing that. But we have a lot of local fruits, like in the midsummer choke cherries, which are a really small cherry. That's very common to North Dakota. Strawberries will grow here, and so. I don't know if you've ever been up north. We have a lot of desserts that are strawberry rhubarb. So we do have a mead that's a strawberry rhubarb.
Awesome.
Mead. Let's see what else do our grapes are local grown grapes. So like a Marquette is a Marquette grape, and our Frontenac we've got for a pink. Our white grape is Prairie Star. These are all northern grown grapes. I think a lot like the Marquette and the Prairie Star for sure are University of Minnesota releases from their vineyards. So we got that. Our honey, our maple one is Minnesota maple syrup.
I see.
Rather than North Dakota, but that's just
close
our neighbors
enough.
here.
Yeah,
So.
right there. We make a lot of maple in Ohio as well.
I've got an apricot that is all made with little apricots that grow locally.
Gosh, I had no idea that there was so much bounty in North Dakota. It's one of the few states left that I have not been to, and I am absolutely dying to go to the Dakotas. Which you're giving me even more of a reason to cross North Dakota off my list. I want to ask a question to circle back to something that you said at the beginning about the fact that you are at North Dakota State University and you teach, I believe, in did you say agronomy or agriculture, and if which leads me to believe at least that you have a level of expertise in agriculture. Has that background and experience has that informed your approach to mead making and ingredients gathering and the production and the process?
Yeah, I would say yes. I have a master's in microbiology.
Oh, wow.
I don't teach. I do lab research.
I see.
So, but yeah, I and even making it, the protocols that you would follow in the research in the lab, those all are very easy to me for making the mead. I also grew up on a farm in North Dakota, so just I have a wide range of knowledge of what does grow in the state. So
that has to help to be able to time out when you're going to make certain things, how you're going to be able to access those ingredients, and so much of I think particularly the Midwest story, but the American story is when it comes to food and culinary is really that marriage between agriculture and sort of the finished product for the consumer, and trying to close that gap, having folks understand, where things actually come from that they consume is part of our mission on Eat Your Heartland Out, trying to put all those pieces together so people, can have an appreciation of what goes into making a product like mead or cider or cheese or anything else. So this is really, as I said, I've learned quite a lot from you and from so many others that I've talked to in all of this. Now I know that you have a tasting room. Is that right?
yes, yep. We have a tasting room. You could come in and we do some sample flights. We do by the glass. We have bottles to go or drink here. And then we have some cheese and salami plates, things like that also.
Do you do any special pairings for, like they do with wine and cheese, for example?
We've done a few. We've done more dessert and mead pairings.
Right.
We did a Valentine's Day 2 years ago, I guess. We did a chocolate and mead pairing. That was fun. And we've done, just various more the desserts. And
Right.
then I'm planning on doing just a honey tasting. So we'll do the honeys along and then have some meads with them.
Wow. Now, and I guess COVID hasn't necessarily slowed you guys down too much because North Dakota is generally open.
Yes, we've been generally open, although it has definitely slowed down. Even though we're open, people really don't want to come out,
Right.
which I perfectly understand. It's definitely a different culture from a year and a half ago.
Are you doing, order pickups or, virtual tastings or any of those other things?
I have done a lot of, I haven't done virtual tastings. We've thought about doing that. We do sell a lot more online sales. I've done
That seems to be a theme.
those are way up. We do have a lot more pickups. People will just call in, order, and pick it up at the store, things like that. throughout the fall, we had an outdoor tasting room. Now that's a little bit cold.
Right.
I have thought about, because we have some heaters, I've thought about doing a winter tasting out on the patio. I don't know how well that'll go over, though.
It's the Midwestern winters are sometimes unforgiving, that's for sure.
But we're hardy folk up here.
That's right. Well, look, I'm in the midst of the snow belt off the Great Lakes here in northeastern Ohio. So I feel you. I mean, the upper Midwest has its own special snow relationship with snow, but we down here, we get pummeled as well. So
Yeah.
I know it's a tough time to try to, take events outdoors. And I just want to ask one final question, because it's one of the things that drew me to reaching out to you, because, you are a board member of the American Mead Makers Association, something that I didn't know existed. And obviously these kind of national associations are really, the standard bearers of, best practices for the industry, exchanging ideas, networking, and really having a pulse on, what's next in the world of mead. So how long have you been on the board, and what are your activities and role that you play in this national role?
Well, I've been on the American Mead Makers Association board for about 3 years. I am currently their secretary.
Very nice.
I guess a lot of our role this past year, 2 years, has been a lot of trying to do legislative issues. Just trying to get mead more known. We're currently writing, we had, before COVID, we had an executive director that did a lot of our inside stuff, but she was laid off, and then now we are starting to rehire for that. So we're doing annually a convention and mead competition, along with the Mazer Cup, which is so we're doing a lot of that stuff. Trying to think of what else we're doing. It's kind of should have listed all those. I would think of it better. But yeah, right now, I would say our biggest thing has been legislative.
Yeah, that makes sense. What kind of things are you advocating for nationally, as well as I would assume at the state level, since so much of the alcohol related laws and tourism issues and production issues and ag issues, are usually in the state house? Yeah,
mostly our stuff has been federal.
Because interesting.
Because every state is different,
right?
In recovery. So I think a lot more of the local people need to cover. But
right.
Our biggest one was getting the Craft Beverage Act passed and making sure mead was included for tax purposes.
You guys pull it off?
Yes, that did go through.
That's great.
And I think that's became a permanent law now. It kept being forwarded annually as a temporary law, but I believe that's permanent now.
Well, as a former lawmaker myself in the state of Ohio, you're speaking my language, and I spent years on the Senate Agriculture Committee in the Ohio Senate. So I dealt with all kinds of these regulatory issues, particularly for craft beer, for wine, so viticulture related issues, and alcohol derived products. So it's great to see advocacy in work, and I think it's also good, as I was saying before, about trying to give people a sense of how agriculture, and everything that is sort of behind the scenes to producing something that we consume. It's also important to recognize that there's a lot that goes into, having a food-based or, a consumer-based business when you're in sort of the food and drink space. And you've highlighted that perfectly, because without, advocacies like your organization, people get left out in the cold.
Yep. And I guess one of the other issues we are working, but that's more regulatory with the TTB, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Trade Bureau, is just even in labeling, because we license as being a winery. And
right.
When you have all these regulations that say what wine can and can't do, but mead just doesn't fit into all of these.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of issues of what we can and can't put on our labels, and they'll want us to put it on the labels in a way that you look at it and say, this just doesn't even make sense.
Right.
And so we have had good progress in that. When I first opened, you could only put mead on the label if it was a traditional mead, which was just honey wine. Since then, now any place where you could say cherry honey wine, you can say cherry mead, or things like that. So they've at least went to, if we could say honey wine, we can call it mead, as long as it's not over 14% alcohol. Then it's a whole nother argument. It's very interesting. So that's an ongoing processes.
Wow. Well, I certainly have my eyes have been open on some of the regulatory issues that are surrounding mead. Makes total sense. And I think we all will have a greater appreciation in all the work that goes into drinking mead, whether it's yours from North Dakota or across the United States. We really are very thankful for you joining us today. Thanks for taking the time.
Oh, I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
You've been listening to Eat Your Heartland Out. This episode was produced by me, Capri Cafaro. Our audio engineers are Liam Warner and Armin Spengen. Theme music by Jason Shaw. You can learn more about the show by visiting heritageradionetwork.org/Eat Your Heartland Out. Eat Your Heartland Out is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
Hey listeners, thank you so much for listening to HRN. We want to make your experience as a listener even better, and to help us do that, we'd love your input on our audience survey. It'll only take a few minutes, and by completing it, you can enter to win a $250 gift card from Goldbelly. Visit heritageradionetwork.org/survey to take the survey and to help us keep growing and improving. That's heritageradionetwork.org/survey. Thanks for your support.